Okay, so thanks for having me today. My name is Julien, as David said. And, I'm a freelancer working on TopTal, which is a platform for freelancers in the US. And I'm really excited to present you an overview of what you can do with Ionic. So what do we want as entrepreneurs, as project managers, and as developers? We want to create the best products in a minimum amount of time and money, right? That's what we all want to do. And I will show you that with the web and Ionic, we have the possibility to code once and deploy everywhere. Why do we have to code once and deploy everywhere nowadays? Well, it is because multi-platform is the new norm. And to this, I will tell you what a typical day of mine is. So I wake up at 8, I check my email and social networks on my cell phone. Okay, I go to work on a machine. Doesn't work well, right? Hope it works. No? Can I have help? Or I think it drops sometimes. I'll try. So for lunch break, what I do is I often, or I go to, I often cook my series. Yeah, it doesn't work. Hello? Yeah, so I go to work, as I said, I'll go to work and I work on the desktop machine. And for lunch break, I often, as I work from home, I often watch series, my favorite series, Netflix, on a tablet or on my smart TV. And in the evening, I relax using a tablet. Right? So as you can see, in a normal day of mine, I use up to 4 devices that are connected to the internet. And we are actually all going multi-platform, and we have numbers to confirm this. So the studies reveal that we mostly use cell phones in the morning, then we use the desktop, and to finish the day, we use tablets before going to bed. And this is definitely true for me, and maybe true for you too, but is it true for all generations? The answer is yes. Whether you are 18 or 55, multi-platform is growing on all of us. To reach everybody, we must go multi-platform. But developing for a different platform can be really challenging. We must use different programming languages that requires different developer skills. Devices have different hardware to communicate to, and the market is fragmented with many operating system versions. It is especially true with Android. And for all these reasons, developing for different platforms is really challenging. Not productive and really expensive as well. So do we have alternatives? So what if I told you that the web could be the solution? So to me, the web is the best platform to build cross-platform applications, and for many reasons. The first reason is because the web is everywhere, and that's something we all have noticed, and we do not even think about it that much because it's pretty natural for our generation. The web is on the go. It's in your office, on your smart TVs, on planes, right? Some recent planes have internet connection, and you can browse the web directly from your seat screen. Also in cars, right? Indeed, Tesla have added a web browser in their cars, and this is a real trend in the industry. And it's even in the air. So my machine right now is acting as a beacon to broadcast the link to the slides. Okay, so you might have received it. If not, you are unlucky. But so if you have an Android device, you can turn location and Bluetooth. You might get it. If you have an iPhone, you need to install the Chrome widget in your widget section, and it will ask you to agree to have physical web notifications. The web is evolving all the time. HTML5 is now capable of controlling the device hardware. We can, for instance, access the following APIs: the vibration APIs, the battery status API, so we can know if you're charging or not, and the status of, is it like, right now I'm 74% of battery, I can know that. Network information, am I on the Wi-Fi, am I on the 4G? Geolocation API, right, GPS, and much, much more. Right? So the web is evolving, and in the meantime, devices became more powerful than ever. In 10 years' time, and since the first iPhone in 2007, processors and memory specs have exploded. We now have in our pockets more power than needed to run any web app. And the web is not just evolving. It also has new capabilities, features that open new possibilities to web developers. For instance, background processes using service workers, right? So a service worker is a JavaScript file that is run by your browser in the background and is completely separated from your web page and handles events fired from your web page and also from the browser itself. It can run, it can even run when the web page is closed. It can leverage offline capabilities via network and asset caching. It can update your app in the background by replacing assets. A service worker can manage web push notification to re-engage your users, and it's available on Chrome, Firefox, Opera, and soon on Safari. This is really new. Okay, so background processors are really cool. But what do we need the most to improve web performance? Well, I believe we miss multi-threading, right? And as you know, JavaScript execution in a browser is single-threaded, right? And web workers are here to tackle this very problem. So the main thread can delegate expensive operation to web workers. A worker has its own event loop and memory space. So the performance of your main thread is not impacted by workers. And it's already available everywhere. So you can use this right now. This is how to instantiate a worker. And to communicate with a worker, we can use the post message API. So data in, data out. So we saw previously that we better go multi-platform to reach everybody. And for me, the web is the best platform to do this. And here is a recap of the reason why. So first of all, the web is a standard runtime available everywhere. The browsers and devices' performance are evolving and upgrading all the time. We can already communicate with hardware via HTML5 API. And the web has now killer features such as background processes and multi-threading support. So trust me on that, it is a really exciting time to be a web developer nowadays. The web now provides tools that create, which you can create almost anything. What we're missing now is a software developer kit, a SDK, to create application and be productive about it. And that's where Ionic comes into place. introducing Ionic, which is SDK to build cross-platform application with web technologies. So Ionic is an open source project, MIT license, and is 100% web-based JavaScript, CSS, HTML. And we can build application for many, many platforms, such as Android, iOS, desktop, and more. First version was released in 2013. It was based on AngularJS, which is known as Angular v1. And v2 and v3 were released this year based on Angular v2+. And soon the v4 will be released, maybe at the end of this year, using Angular and Stencil. Okay, so we're going to talk about Stencil because this is pretty new. It's been announced like 2 weeks ago. So we can have a sneak peek about what Stencil is. So Stencil is a compiler for web components. It can build 100% vanilla custom elements that can work on all the browsers. Okay, and it allows server-side rendering and async rendering as well, the same way React Fiber does. It is based on TypeScript and use JSX as well. We're going to see that in a minute. And it's also MIT license. Here we have a Stencil. We have a web component, my hostname, and the output of this component is my hostname is, and then the hostname of the machine, right? So here is how the component looks like. We have a @component decorator. If you are familiar with Angular 2, you might see it is the same API. Right? We have a tag name that represents the name of your component and a style URL. You can put a path to a file, or you can directly put style inline if you prefer. And the render function is similar to React function, React render function. It returns JSX here. Properties represent data that comes from the outside of the component. Here we have a component, my name is, right? And we put from the outside a name in the prop name, my name, right? And the output is my name is my name. To do this, we have also a prop decorator. Defines the property that we expect from the outside. And we have a type. It has a type. It's a string. It has a name, right? It's a name. In the render function, we can access this property by using this dot and then the property name. And every time name changes from the outside, it will recall the render function here, same way React does. And if you want to do advanced features, you can subscribe to Changes as well, and you can do whatever you want with the data using the decorator prop will change. And to finish with Stencil, we're going to see what states are. So the states represent the internal data of a web component. And here the counter web component will increase a counter by 1 every 1 second. That's how the code looks. We have a @state decorator. We define count as the property and number as the type, and by default it's 1. In a render function, also we can access count by using this .count. And we use lifecycle event component did load to start the counter from increasing by 1 using set interval, right? And every time this count reference changes, so every second, the component will re-render. Okay, so we have a counter that do 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Alright, so Ionic comes with dozens of components out of the box. And each component has a look and feel of the original platform. So for instance, here, buttons. On the left side, we have buttons for Android. So if you build your app for Android, you will get what's on the left. If you build the app for iOS, you'll get what's on the right with the exact same code. We have cards, components, icons. Also, you can see that there are some differences, but it is exactly the same code. Time pickers is a real pain for web developers, and Ionic has really great component for that. Segment, which is similar to tabs. Models, loading, slides to create tutorials. So with Ionic, you get the majority of components you might need to create great user interface. Only one language and code base are necessary. There is no need to learn about Objective-C for iOS, neither Swift for iOS, or Java for Android. All you need is JavaScript. With one code base, with only one code base based on web technologies, we are able to create applications for many platforms. Among those, Android, iOS, like I said, Windows Universal, Electron, which are desktop apps, and web apps. So it's one code base to rule them all. Ionic applications are native applications. That's something people miss sometimes. They are native applications that can be installed from the stores, right? Google Play on Android, App Store for iOS, or whatever store you have on your platform. But how does this work? Well, the magic behind is named Cordova. Cordova is an open source project that provides native shells for a lot of platforms. This native shell has access to all the device hardware the same way any native app has. The native shell runs a web view, which is a simple browser, and we can control the hardware via HTML5 for some features, and for the missing features, we can use Cordova API. And on top of that, we can build application using any framework you want, so Angular, React, Vue, or none of them, and we can use Ionic components as well. So your Ionic components have therefore access to every API needed to build complete application. We just saw that Ionic apps were native, but did you know that Ionic apps are also progressive web apps? Well, they are by default. They have a pre-configured service worker that already has asset caching and network caching by default. So it caches all the necessary file, HTML, JavaScript, images, fonts, whatever. And it has a network-first strategy for caching network communication. So by default, every connection, if you are online, it will cache it will serve from the network first. If you are offline, it will use the cache. And it has also a pre-configured manifest.json with all the necessary property that either Google uses for search engine uses to search progressive web apps, or also browsers need to install the application on your home screen. How to start using Ionic? So to install Ionic on your machine, we first need to install the Ionic CLI. It can be installed globally with this command using npm. And the CLI can help you create new applications, new pages, component providers. It can run a local dev server, and you can emulate your application on iOS emulator, Android emulator, and you can also build for every platform. So all you need is the Ionic CLI. So we saw earlier that nowadays we have to go multi-platform, and to do so, the web is the best platform. To code once and deploy everywhere, using the web, Ionic is clearly a good option. It has a large set of components available out of the box. It's only one programming language is necessary, JavaScript, and it is the most popular one, so it's easy for most of us. Only one code base is necessary to build on every platform with a specific look and feel. Ionic apps are native apps that can be installed in the stores, but also progressive apps. You can access any hardware via Cordova plugins or HTML5. And to finish, we have the Ionic CLI, and you don't have to worry about complex configuration of Webpack, for instance. Everything is done by the CLI for you. So you do not have to take my word for it. I'm going to show you some of the commands. It's time for a quick live demo. So I will show you really quickly, because we don't have much time, but how to create an application and how to run it on the iOS emulator for now. So to create a new app, we can use the Ionic start command, and that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to run the dev server using Ionic serve command. Okay. Cool. All right, so we're going to try to create a application. So we run Ionic start. It's asking you what name you want to call it. So we're going to call it test. And then you can select a template for your application. So you can start from an application that has tabs, 3 tabs, so it's easy for you to build on top of that. Blank, which is just a white screen. Side menu, you have a side menu directly built in. Super is a lot of new features, lazy loading, stuff like this, really advanced stuff. And conference is a real live example of an application for conferences. So that's what we're going to build. So if you click OK, no. Okay, I have already a project named test, I guess. Test 2, conference. Okay, whatever, it's gonna fetch the necessary files and npm install. So this could take a few minutes, so we don't have a few minutes, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop, and I have it already installed. My new app is a conference app, so we're gonna try to serve this. All right, so to serve it on a local dev server, we're gonna use Ionic serve. It's gonna build the app, and it's gonna open a new browser window and serve this application. So it can take several seconds. That's the Ionic
conference app. I'm gonna open the DevTools and run it as a Nexus 5X Android device. So that's how it looks. So you have a side panel. You can scroll the talk. You can open a talk. You can go and check the speaker list. You have also a map, right? And we have models. So if I click here, I think it's a model, right? That opens on top of the application. We have also a fab button, like this, really cool. Okay, so I'm almost done. Oh, okay, it's here. Sorry. So we're gonna stop this, and we can try a new, the same command with -- lab. I want to see how cool is this. So it is exactly the same command, but you can see how your application looks on different devices. Here, Android on the left, middle it's Windows, and iOS on the right. And you can play with them if you want. So, right, you can see that the animation here is different from this one. Actually, looks similar, but for iOS it's a little bit different, right? And this is exactly the same code base. There is no if iOS I do this, if Android I do that. It's exactly the same code. Okay. Cool. Building for the web as a production application with minification of your assets, it's really easy. You just have to run this command. For iOS, what you require is OS X, right, and Xcode. You need a Mac machine. And the command is simple, Ionic Cordova platform add iOS. It will install the necessary plugins to run your application on this platform. If you want to run your application on the emulator or on device, if you have plugged it in, you can run this command. And if you want to run a production build, you can run this command. So I've run this emulator command. It's here. So this is the emulator, and you have your application in it. It's right there. You can open it, you can play with it. It's exactly the same as I showed you on the browser. So one really cool feature here is you can develop on the browser and then deploy on devices, different devices, in no time. Okay, so for Android, it is exactly the same commands, and it's gonna be the same for a lot of platforms, right? So here only Android changes, and also you require some other stuff. Of course, you require Angular SDK and Java, and it is exactly the same commands, right? So as you can see, it's really easy to create application for different platforms. You only need to run several commands, really easy commands. It is the same commands for all the platforms, so it's really easy, right? So thank you very much for your time.